the first thing I realized in terms of what are the common challenges that we face attorneys that are really at the core of, it doesn't mean that our lives are bad or we're miserable or anything of that sort. It just means that not only could we be happier, but my own experience, my personal experience, my experience with professionals and especially with attorneys is there's always a gap. There's generally a gap between the external success that we have and how we feel about ourselves. And the project that we take on is I'm going to reach a certain level of success and I'm going to have some of the trappings of the success or some of the benefits to that success. And then my internal experience will catch up with that. And that generally that doesn't always happen. And I think it gets to a point where you realize, holy cow, something needs to change. And the first thing is that what I realize is that we tend to be victimized by the profession. We tend to feel like we are actually victims of what the law requires of us. And if you think about it, we don't like victims. Nobody on this call, nobody likes victims. We don't like it when our clients, what it's like dealing with a client who's like, oh, this is so unfair. How could they do this? Why doesn't the president do something? Whatever it is. That when you come up with people that are victimized, we're not that type of people. We're empowered people. So the first common challenge that we have is how do we have a relationship to the law that we don't feel as if we're victims? Because as long as you're victims, you're disempowered. It's somebody else's fault. You're not standing in your own power. You're not seeing opportunities. So we want to get to the point, and it's very hard for us to because there's so much that we can point to that is victimized. I mean, most of you don't know my background, but I practiced law in a corrupt West Virginia town where the judges were all bought off. The cops were all crooked. The lawyers held a meeting when I came to town at one of the restaurants and said, we got to get rid of Dave Gold. Now, I have all the reasons in the world to feel victimized, but I didn't. And you don't need to anyway. So the first point is that you don't want to feel victimized. Get a couple of notes here. Yeah, the second point is that, and these are just, meta points, and I'll get into some of the details of what I said I was going to talk about today, is that if you're looking for a reason to disqualify yourself as to why you're not entitled to be happier, why you're not entitled to have peace, why you're not entitled to have not only the benefits you're seeking for, but like these unimaginable things, which I think is what we all want. Everything worthwhile resides in the unknown. You could put that on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker or whatever. But the fact is, it's not only the things that we want, but the things that are beyond what we want. And just about every person I've met during the course of my life has a reason to say, not me. I'm not entitled to it. If they knew what I knew, there's no way in heck that they would do that. So the second one is you're always going to have a reason. So one, you don't want to be victimized. Two, if you're looking for reasons to disqualify yourself, you can always do that. And the third larger context point I want to make before I get into the details is that and Tom knows this about me, and I think Marcia's learning it about me, and just our chance meeting, is that I believe you're all here for a reason. I have no idea what that reason is. And I'm not, saying I'm just so important that if you come into my life, I'm going to change, this could very well be a cameo role that I'm just playing, and, you take one thing out of this and you go your own way. But at this point in my life, the people that I don't want to be with are gone. And the people that seem to attract me to get whatever it is they might want to get are here. And one of the things that I differentiate with, and I think Marcia and I were talking about this yesterday, is the difference between magical thinking and thinking like a magician. Magical thinking is where, everything, my client's innocent. God's going to come in and find a way to get him off or get this, this miscarriage of justice done. And I'm going to sit in my office until that happens. That's magical thinking. Think like a magician is being open to the magic of life. And this is where the magic happens. The magic happens in life when you're open to that possibility, which is that we're all here today for whatever that is. So that's the larger context of what it is that we're doing here today. One, we don't want to be victims. Two, we want to stop building this relentless case against ourselves. And maybe you're not one of those people, and if so, congratulations. I mean, I'm 71 years old. I've got all kinds of, decades in spiritual work and self-improvement, And this morning I came in from walking the dogs and I left my phone out on the table outside when I brought the dogs in. And when I couldn't find my phone, Dave, you idiot. How many times, Brad, Joe, Marcia, Tom, whatever, Alexander, you're an idiot. So that doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do you any good at all. And I remember I I taught at FAU for a while, and I had a course. There were 6 type A lawyers in the course, and they were just so driven. And I said, if I could take that drive away from you, if I could take it so you weren't constantly criticizing yourself, constantly feeling inadequate, constantly feel like something was wrong with life, that you could do something so much better and that you're just fundamentally wrong, would you let me take that away from you? And one of the guys said, no way. That's why I'm successful. So if you're operating under the illusion that you need to be hard on your, I used to have on a previous website, I said, being hard on yourself doesn't make you any better. It just makes life harder. So if you're here right now, you're not a bad person. It's as radical as that might sound. You're not a bad, you're a good person. You're trustworthy. You got warts? Yeah. So second one, okay, don't be victimized. We're not going to look for reasons to disqualify ourselves. And we're going to leave the space open for some kind of magic. And, whatever that means, opportunity, synchronicities, something like that. All right. Anybody want to throw anything in before I kind of move into the great lessons that I learned as a hermit out in the woods for 30 days? Don't need to. You're welcome to. Anything strike anybody like, oh yeah, that's me or that's not me?
Yeah, I think your remarks there are something I can resonate with. And you constantly have this voice in your head driving you to work harder, push harder, not let up. And you think that's what has caused the success in your life. But at some point, that's not very helpful anymore. And that's what I'm trying to turn it off a little bit, because I'd like to coast a little bit, or, let up. But it's in conflict because I feel like letting up will cause failure or something to go wrong where it hasn't yet.
You read your script perfectly too. You're hired. I mean, that is such a perfect and succinct, and it gets to one of the fundamental things that's going to go through this. And as I said, did I meditate? Do I have work? Yeah, I do all that stuff, I did all that stuff, but that's not what this is about. It's about, do you trust life enough to let up long enough to find out if you can let up? There's a bumper sticker there, Tom. We should write that one down. All right. Whatever it is I just said, I'd say it again if I could remember it. But can you trust life enough to let go long enough for life to prove that you can let go? And so many of us, the gentleman I talked to yesterday is such a great guy, and we're going to work together. And he basically said, I think ahead that if I do this, then this could lead to that. And I don't want to do this because it could lead to that. And then we realized all we're doing when we do that is self-sabotaging. We're just saying, I'm not going to take the first step because step 20 might land me in a homeless shelter. But look at you guys. None of you, you've proven it. We've all everybody on this call is incredibly successful. So we've all proven that. So a lot of what I'm saying are just kind of backdoor ways to how do we let go long enough to let life prove its trustworthiness to you. And that has been the key. I've done, it was 62 before I had the guts to do it. And it was really in the guts. I just happened to meet the woman of my dreams, and I realized that I was going to have to love more than I feared and trust more than I controlled. And that was the beginning of a transformation. And everybody can have whatever it can be. It can be this, it can be something else. But I would invite you, as we lawyers say, I would suggest that how do we create a safe space? How do we create a safe space where we can let go long enough for that to do it? And, life can do that. Someone can do that. A lot of people, it's one of the things, I don't want to sound like an infomercial, but I would be remiss if I didn't say it's one of my skills, is creating that safe space for you. So you're not going to get off the rails. You don't have to worry that if you don't go in on Saturday, that the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to be in a bread line. Okay. Or whatever it is. If you take that second drink, that you're going to end up as an alcoholic. I don't want to get into the details, but you know what I'm saying. Okay. Very good. Anybody else I know it's a tough act to follow. Does anybody else want to throw anything in terms of anything that's happened here yet? And I won't take it personally if you don't. Okay. All right. Thanks, Joe. So I talked about the lessons learned from 30 Days in the Woods. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I realized that I actually had a prelude to the time in the woods, which is I had just graduated law school. I was spending a summer on the farm of my Zen teacher in West Virginia. And I went out to a tent a friend of mine had put a tent out on the back end of his farm and stayed there for a while. And he was coming back. And I said, just leave the tent out there. I'm going to go out there for 6 days. And I went out to this little pup tent for 6 days. And I tell you, it wasn't that much fun. I mean, it sounds like Walden, but it's it's more like solitary confinement to type A people. But one thing that happened is as I sat in that tent, and I remember looking up at the tent pole on the ridge, I thought, until I can be comfortable in my own skin, nothing I do externally is going to satisfy me. In other words, I'm always going to look for something outside of myself that I could resonate with to make me feel good, when the key is really inside of myself. And that's, I think, unfortunately, that's a very high bar. I don't even know if it's a realistic bar. And even after all these years, I get, there's a word in my faith called spilkies. I get my background, I'm just saying my faith, but where I get nervous, I still get restless. And so, but the fact is, I knew that there was something internal that was the key to everything. And I did have a very intense practice. And as I said in the emails, that sometime around Christmas, depending on, trial dates and all this other stuff, I would just pack up after this really intense month of settling cases and trying to get everything together so I can go away without totally burning my partners. And I would just drive out as far as I could, and then spend the next 2 or 3 hours bringing a month's worth of supplies out to my cabin. And then I just shut the door. And I'm not sure, my wife once said, God bless her, that she loves me for good reasons and no good reasons. And I think that I have good reasons for doing it, and I have reasons that will just be a mystery. But because I was sandwiched in between this legal, this intense legal stuff leading up to that, and the intense legal, when I came out of isolation, I might get a day before I was back in court fighting with somebody, if I was lucky. So I actually had the law kind of pressing in on me from both sides. And I also had time to really get to understand myself and understand my mind. And about 2 weeks in, I would get sane. And I realized I wasn't really sane. The rest of the time, I could play a sane man on TV, but in terms of actually being sane, I realized, and I once asked myself, am I always this crazy and I'm just seeing it because I'm in isolation? Or is isolation driving me crazy? And I don't mean crazy. I wasn't shrieking, and tearing boards out of the walls or anything, but I just watched my crazy mind. And I had an experience that is, I think, directly germane to all of us, which is I realized that the first thing I did is I got nothing to do after all this activity. So I cut firewood. So I'd have firewood, and I'd go out and I'd cut firewood. And about 4 days in, I looked out my door and I said, my God, we could have a second ice age. And I got more than enough firewood. But then I had to do something else. And I realized, wait, I solved one problem, but then I'm going to look for another problem and another problem and another problem. And it wasn't till my second teacher that I had that he said that the mind is a problem-making machine. So this is an important thing to just consider, that if you watch yourself and realize your mind is constantly creating problems and then seemingly solving problems, which gives us a sense of control. But the truth is that if your mind's just going to make another problem, don't kid yourself into thinking that when this problem is solved, you're going to have peace. I just want to disabuse you of that. It doesn't mean that you're not going to, that there aren't things that get resolved and things that make your life better and easier and happier and more fulfilling and more loving. Sure, those things kind of happen. But the hamster wheel that we're on is that the next problem that I solve is going to solve the problem once and for all. And your mind is not going to stop. It's not what it's designed to do. The mind is a problem-making machine, and that's not problematic. It's just you have it in your right, you have it in the right context. So if you just watch yourself and watch your mind without judging yourself, we're getting back to not saying you're no damn good because you left the phone out on the back, on the back porch this morning, is you say, wait a second, this is just the truth. I just want to get down to some truth, because when we get to the truth, we can actually start seeing things more clearly. So the first point that I would say is just, and we're going to get to what some of the implications of this are, is that your mind is going to continue to create problems. We're in the perfect profession for that to be a feature and not a bug. Because what better thing is there to do as a lawyer than to solve problems, right? That's what we do. And so we're confirmed, but then we find out, wait a minute, all these problems I'm solving in my practice aren't solving the whatever it is, the disquieted feeling, the unsettling feeling, the sense that there's more, the sense that I could be more. And this isn't back to being perfect. It has nothing to do with being perfect. It has everything to do with just knowing that I don't need to solve this. I don't need to solve this. And this gets back to Joe, what you're talking about. Like, it's a trust issue where, I got, and I don't always sound, not this sexy husky voice all the time. I got really, really sick a couple of days ago. And I thought, I could sit there and think, oh my God, I'm really sick. Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to just glub when I get up there? And I just didn't engage with that. I just refused to engage with, and I told Marcia, if you don't want to come over because I'm not feeling good, I still was a responsible human being. But the point is that I didn't engage with that. And again, you start to get more discernment about what's worth engaging with and what isn't. But just, you're not going to be able to get this genie back in the bottle. Your mind is always going to create problems. How you respond to that, how you relate to that is where the freedom is. Which is why, I did, meditation retreat. I've done all kinds of, I don't know how many engine hours I have in meditation, and they're not wasted. But that's not what freed me. And occasionally I'll still, I'll be in here and my wife said, what are you doing? I said, I guess I'm meditating. I don't know. Why are you doing that? I said, I guess I feel like it. You do it because you like to do it, not because you think you're going to get better or cure something. All right. First one, mind is a problem. So it's your relationship to your mind. Okay. Can you follow this? I mean, am I making sense? Okay, cool. I think I am. Sounds good coming out. The second is it's a relationship to our mind. The second is our relationship to time. And I had a coaching client, and he had over 8,000 jumps, parachute jumps, skydiving jumps. And it didn't really seem like an adrenaline junkie. I couldn't figure it out. And I said, why do you do it? He said, because in that whatever minute 30, I don't know what the timing is. So if you're a skydiver, forgive my ignorance, but whatever the time period was between the time he jumped out of the plane and the time he hit the ground, he was free of time. He had no control over anything. There was nothing to do except fall to the earth. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And in isolation, especially, but this is true in every part of my life, I found that I was at war with time. I always felt I had too little time. Okay, I got a deadline. I got a trial deadline. I got this, I got that, I got everything else I got to do. And, that makes us feel very much in control. I got a deadline. I'm going to work my ass off and I'm going to solve it. And so my relationship to time, that's one thing, but the pressure of that is, unrelenting. And then there's time when you got nothing to do, at least I do. And you can, if the shoe fits, put on whatever extent the slipper works, is I just found that when I got nothing to do, I went nuts, which is one of the reasons I went to my cabin, because I had nothing that I could do, so I was done chopping firewood. So wait a second now, if I'm living in a situation, and this sounds bleak, but trust me, there's a happy ending to all this. I'm not giving you a headache to sell you an aspirin. There's an aspirin here. I just have to make sure you understand at least in my sense, my experience, what the issue is or whatever, what the challenge is if my mind is constantly creating problems and I'm feeling like I don't have enough time or I have too much time, well, I can, change wives, change jobs, change careers, change houses, change anything, but I'm still always going to have these, these things that are just kind of chewing around the edges of our peace of mind. Okay. And we don't want to live that. You don't have to live that way. Again, we're wired this way. It's fine. It's been great for our careers. My first teacher, he had an experience like 20 years before anybody came to see him. And then suddenly people were coming to see him. And I said, what happened? He said, well, people started taking acid, LSD, and that gave him an artificial spiritual intuition. And I said, do you think people should take acid? He said, no, once you get the message, hang up the phone. So you've got the message. You've taken this and you have taken this forward, and you have, been successful with this and learned how to take your relationship to time and utilize it to your greatest. Marcia there sees 400, she's in 400 people's houses a year. I don't know how the hell she does it, but she's obviously got time, she's got the heck knocked out of time. So, I'm sure efficiency is a big one. But then I'm sure you also find yourself procrastinating, right? You get something in there and you say, why am I not doing this? And it isn't all, I don't want to, it's a whole nother seminar, webinar, whatever. But it's because we're just afraid if we finish it, we're going to be left by ourselves. And what's that going to leave us? And that kind of goes back to the thing about being comfortable in your own skin. What I want for all of you is to be comfortable in your own skin. You're comfortable in your own skin, everything changes. And the rest are details. And also that, just for what it's worth, they give you the back of the book answer. The details get better. Your life actually turns out better when you're comfortable in your own skin. And that gets back to kind of the punchline of all of this, is that it's about a level of self-acceptance that is not congruent with traditional notions of lawyering. Maybe I am good enough. Maybe I have what it takes. Maybe I got my ass kicked in this case, but that's okay. I don't know. It gets a little subtle here, but I mean, you start to just feel okay about who you are, and not because you've trained yourself or you've done some meditation or self-hypnosis. It's because once you start letting go and trusting life and letting life prove itself to you, and the right people come in, the right opportunities come in, all those things start to happen, you start to get a better sense of the perfection of who you are. But anyway, I'm jumping to the back of the book. So the first one is our relationship to our minds, which is a problem-making machine. The relationship to time, which generally is there's too much or too little of it. Just checking the time here. Okay. And the third lesson, because I said there'd be three, and that drives my wife nuts because I always say there's three of this and three of that, but I got to do a third. It's our relationship to peace. Our relationship to peace. And you can call that peace of mind. You can call it calm. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But what is that relationship that we have to being peaceful? And I went to going out in isolation was a radical type A, at least for the first couple of weeks. I'm trying to think of phrases I could use that aren't, but it was everything to the wall of, I'm going to get peaceful and I'm going to fast. Yeah, I hated fasting. God, did I hate fasting. But I'd fast for the first 5 days and suffer. And then, I just got used to it. And after a while, I would get peaceful. And I thought, okay, I'll do this next year and I'll get peaceful again. And I got peaceful. But what I didn't realize then, which I do know now, is that I wasn't creating peace. And this is radical. I mean, it's a bit of a leap here. So, you might want to put your parachute on. All that wind up, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, that there is a peaceful part of you. You're already at peace. There's a peaceful part of you that you discover. You don't create peace. You just strip away or walk away from or unburden yourself or whatever the proper verb is here. I don't want to say transcend, but there's a way that you start stripping away that from you, which is not peaceful. And then you don't have to go to the woods. You don't have to do all the crazy things that I did as a spiritual adept, all the time building a law practice at the same time. So just the thought, all I can do is kind of lay that out to you. There is a part of you that's already peaceful that you get in touch with, but we're so used to the baseline of our experience being tension and fear and disquieting, and I should be doing something else and I should be someone else, that we just will not listen to that voice of peace. We will not attune to that peace. And and that's why I said it's all in relationship, and I don't know if it's coming through here or not, is you can start to intuit or sense, oh, what he's saying is true. I am peace. There is a peaceful part of myself. I do not have to take heroic measures to find peace. I mean, Tom's got 6 kids, 4 of his own, 2 adopted. He's got this incredible practice. He spends all this, he's been giving me all this time. And he's still, with all of that stuff, he's still peaceful. He has an inherent peace that doesn't go away. And I mean, if I had his life, I'd be nuts. I'd be absolutely insane. But the fact is, it's not, and he's good. He knows how to allocate resources, and he's quite organized and knows what he sets boundaries. He's great at setting boundaries, including with me. But the fact is that you can be peaceful in almost any situation. And then I'll give this as an adjunct to you. And again, I know I'm fire hosing everybody, but it's okay. Which is that which does not make you peaceful is not, I can't prove this. I can just take my own experience. If it doesn't make me peaceful, I'm not interested in it. And that doesn't mean that I don't have to work. I mean, I had to fight my way through not feeling good to get everything together, and there's things I had to go walk the dogs and I felt like hell. So it doesn't mean that, oh, I just want to be a happy-go-lucky person. And I'm always happy all the time. And if it's, no, that's not, there's a certain discernment that comes with this. But if someone in my life is bringing me agita, I don't want to be with them. I'm taking that as a sign. And sometimes it's people that are just, that you love. And you have to figure out what do I do with this? As Tom knows, I have a daughter who's been incredibly challenging. I love her to death. And in fact, I started a podcast with an industry expert in adolescents and young adults because I just bringing my experience out to the world. And so, it's not like life just gets, super easy, but you get to the point where, no, am I going to cut my daughter out of my life? No, she's my daughter. I love her. I was so fortunate that I retired from the law. I started a company. I sold that company. Then we talked to my daughter. I was able to be with her for the first 5 years of my life because I take a package. So no, am I going to cut her out of my life? No. Do I have to set boundaries so she doesn't drive me nuts? And so I don't get dragged into her drama so that I can continue to be the father that I want to be? Yeah. So the point is that you can choose. You can choose the people. And this gets back to what Joe and I were talking about early on, is the trust. I trust that this person who's just, making trouble for me. And sometimes you wait too long. You see the signs and then, oh yeah. I had a partner in a previous iteration, what I'm doing now. I just saw the warning signs and I just loved the guy and we were just great together. We were just a terrific pair. And then one day he embezzled from me. And I just ignored all the signs. Not that he was an embezzler, but I ignored the signs that this man created tension for me because I couldn't trust him. And life had to show me where that is. And the less hard knocks we have to take in our own minds, the less we have to have life hit us over the head with a 2x4 to say, this is not the person you want in your life. So, so relationship to time, relationship to our minds, and just our relationship to peace. And I can't tell you the last one, oh, okay, now I'm going to find my peaceful part of myself. I can't chart. I mean, I can help you chart a path to that or help you experience that and create a field where you can experience that peace, but stop chasing it. Stop feeling there's something wrong with you because you're not peaceful, and take the signs that life is giving you that, yes, I am going to trust life, but I'm also going to I'm not going to be stupid about this. I in a previous iteration of my business, I said I was shamelessly spiritual and ruthlessly accountable. That I want to think like a magician, but I want to have my feet firmly planted in the ground. So you can do both, meaning trusting in that which you can't see and working the things that you can see and you can control. And then living in that space in between where you're grounded enough that you can be secure and feel safe, but at the same time, you're in touch with the magic of life where you can truly live a magical life. So that's great. I wrote down like 8 words. And I think I covered all the 8 right on this little piece of paper before I sat down. So it sounds like I knew what I was going to talk about, but I'm not sure that I did. So I'd like to get some feedback here because I'm doing a lot of talking. So any thoughts, questions, comments, connections, whatever? Anything you want me to go deeper into? I guess not. Okay. So
I guess what was could you go back to the reason why you decided to go on the 30-day retreat? Like, was there a triggering event to that, or?
it's a good question. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let you see how the sausage is made. Okay. So the teacher this first teacher that I had, I wrote a book about him, is he had he had 2 farms. He had the farm that was kind of like his center or whatever, such as it was. And then he also had a meditation farm, and he would go out there and go there 30 days. And he recommended that everybody do something like that. And so I'm not handy. I had someone build the cabin, helped a little bit. And then I went out for like 4 days or 5 days and got through that. And then the rest of the guys, it was a real macho kind of a group. And those guys said, Dave Gold can't do 30 days. No way Dave Gold could do 30 days. So a lot of this was just my type A personality. But I think so, that's what started me into it. There was already a model for it. People were doing it every year. When I went out, there were other people out in 30 days. I wouldn't see them. We were all kind of kept to ourselves. But the fact there was kind of a framework for it. And then why did I keep going is because what I came away with was that experience of peace, the experience of knowing that I was complete. And that's a very tricky thing to talk about, because to say that, complete makes I don't need anybody, take my wife, take my dogs, take Tom, take all these people in my life that I love, and I'm fine without them. And it's not that I want to be a hermit. I didn't want to live more than 30 days out in the woods, but that I could feel that I was contained and that I didn't need anything else but myself. And then whatever life could fill in around the edges, I could live and I could love. That was great. But I did come away with that knowledge that I was complete. And where I was misguided was I was trying to have an experience. I went out there hoping I'd get enlightened and then I could get on with my life. And at some point, and also interestingly enough, is after I left my practice and moved away, I thought I should go back out for a retreat. I went out and like after 2 days, I said, this isn't for me anymore. It was done. That time was over. One of the interesting things, getting back to the connection, was that I found myself loving people more out there in the woods than I did even. It wasn't like, oh, I don't need you, so the hell with you. I felt such love and appreciation for the people in my life because I was free to do that. I don't know why. I guess it's just because the noise is gone. I cleared away enough of the things standing between me and peace that I could experience the bond that we had. And I have no doubts that it made me a more loving person. And I really don't know why. It's funny when Tom and I were playing with this campaign, I thought, well, that's interesting. I was out in the woods for 30 days and I basically just, tell people that to delight my friends and impress my family and stuff. But I realized, no, actually there's things that I learned there that are valuable. So to the extent I could put a reason to it, that's as much of the backstory as I could give you. So that's that. Marcia, anything on your mind, my dear?
Do you
As a
think
non-lawyer?
as a non-lawyer,
Just as a person.
do you think all of us need that time alone? I cannot imagine 30 days.
No.
I can to the beach though, but not in the woods.
No, I would not advise anyone to do this. And I'm not saying you got to do this because it was there's something Tom and I talk about. It's one of my father's admonitions about, not admonitions, but advice about how to make decision. And one of the questions you ask yourself is this mine to do? Going to the woods for 30 days was mine to do. Going to the woods for 30 days with you isn't yours to do, or Joe's to do. Alexander, that's not yours. And, Tom has his own beautiful practice or whatever you want to call it that takes him away from, that's his to do. It's different than mine, but it's his to do. So no, it's not a one size fits all. What is it? Okay, where do I find my peace? Where do I find my peace? And not making peace as just an antidote for stress. Yeah, that's good. It's good to take some time away. Whoever it was that said they were on vacation for a week and they just got back, so they'll call. Whatever. No, it's like, no, peace is more and more taking hold of myself as my natural state. It becomes your natural state. And it doesn't mean I don't get aggravated. It doesn't mean that I don't have, I've got 4,000 years of Jewish neuroses in my veins. They ain't going anywhere. So it doesn't mean that all that stuff isn't here, but I have a measure of peace. And it's why I can get in front of people like this and not, have 8 words written down and not care who shows up, because I'm just peaceful. So no, but what is that place of peace. And then the other thing, and I put this out to people because it's a really good, isn't mine to do, but a second piece of advice that my father gave me was, ask yourself, how does a decision make you feel? And that doesn't mean the decision, like I said, that the collection basket comes by in church and you reach, I feel like I could take $20 out. No, I'm not talking about, doing something that's adverse to your values. But you get a real sense of, how does you know more than you know. So you start to sense, okay, how does that make me feel? And then you start, this is where the point I was driving towards is then you start to get discerning. You get discernment because you feel the difference. I said, there's a difference between between acting out of compulsion, where I just feel compulsive. I've got to act, versus acting out of, enjoyment, love, excitement, right? Because it's mine to do. And and everybody here knows themselves well enough to make that discernment. You know yourself well enough to know when you're just being compulsive, right? Same way, the difference between procrastination and waiting for the perfect moment. People can give seminar about time management. It's a waste, it's a waste of time. I don't know. Maybe some people get some out of it. It's not time management. It's a relationship time. I feel energetically, this is the time to do nothing. And if I do something, it's just to fill up the hours. So at the end of the day, I feel I've accomplished something. And, it's also, and all of us think, oh, we're the only ones. We're not the only ones. This is a universal language. And so you stop listening to the tyranny of old voices. And the more you stop being a victim of your own voices or feeling like you're a victim of your own voices, the more that something else starts to emerge, which is what you really do want, what really is important to you. And then this starts moving up. You get this virtual. It's like I said about Julie that I realized the more I saw her, the more I loved her, the more I loved her, the more I could see her. And then the more I saw, the more I loved her. The same way, the more I trust, the more I let go. The more I let go, the more I get proof of trusting. And then you start to get on. And that's what I really want for people. To whatever extent I can have an influence or have a role in their lives, is I want to set them on that circuit where they're moving up. And then they don't need me. It's like,
Dave, Dave, I got a question, Dave. Can
Yeah.
you, because again, awesome presentation. I always love listening to you. You guys had a lot of neat nuggets. How do you help? What's the step that you help me? What do you help them with? How do they get to where you are? And what's the plan?
I have to laugh a little bit because Tom's just make sure I always get down to the point. So I've done all kinds of, I'm going to tell a little story and then get to that. So I was doing some coaching and I thought, I like this coaching. I'd like to get 10 coaching clients, and boom, I had 10 coaching clients in matter. And it was, like I said, the guy that came in to get the mice out of our crawl space, he became a client. People I met, just boom, they just all came in. I didn't even have to market. And then I did that for a while. And then it just wasn't, everybody kind of, went their own ways. And I realized some of these people graduated, they got what they wanted. Some of these people were getting too close to things they didn't want to see. And that was fine. And so I gave up the coaching and moved on to something, started another business, and, just basically showered my love on everybody that came into my presence, whether they were clients or not. And then something else just emerged recently, which is that, and it's why Marcia and I connected, or why I felt such a connection to hers. The way that she goes into a house and she could, in an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, fix or whatever, ameliorate, let's use that word, any behavior that's driving your pet, your dog nuts. I do the same thing with people. I know, I sense pretty quickly, there's people I can't work with, obviously, they have no self-reflection. They just want to be right and they want to be miserable. And so, what can I do? But that's not the people that generally come to webinars like this or come into my life, is that I can sense, like Joe, I sense, I feel you. I feel you. I know what I know what it's like to be you. And if we talked, I would, you'd say, wait a minute, you got a private investigator following me around? I just know your experience because it's one experience. So one is I have that feeling for people. And then what I do is I rather than a form, I start off with what I call a thorn removal session, which is I come in and generally it takes an hour and a half. Sometimes it's an hour. Sometimes I'll even go 3. I'm not on the clock in that sense. And I will identify and most likely remove the biggest single obstacle you have in your life. And to yourself, if they're coming to foreclose on your house or whatever, I can't necessarily help you with that. But I mean, whatever it is over and over that's hanging you up. And I can guarantee, like Joe, you keep reaching a point where you feel like you want to do something different, and then something comes into your life and you back off. Say, wait a minute, I can do this later. This isn't a top priority. I got this case. I got a mortgage. I got my wife, whatever it is, my kid's graduation. I don't know what, it doesn't matter. And so, oh, what is it? What is it that's keeping me from taking that move? And then it's some form of self-sabotage, not feeling a good enough, self-disqualification. It could be a lot of things. So that's what I do. And then from there, if there's an ongoing mentoring relationship, then we go from there. But it starts off with one of these thorn removal sessions. And then, yeah, we'll see where it goes. Did I answer the question okay, Tom? Did I need any more details?
You did perfect. Simple and easy. Yeah, that's what he does. He removes thorns. And I would say this because I've helped him put his site together. These weren't attorneys, these were other people that did it, but he's got testimonials showing you, and they are all like, they come in one way and they leave getting things that they weren't expecting that they were going to get above and beyond what they got. And Dave, just like he did with you a bit, Joe, has this ability just to sit with you. And then all of a sudden you think that you're kind of going around something. You don't even know what it is going around. And Dave will say something, plop you right in the middle of it. And all of a sudden it opens up to there's the thorn. There was the real thorn. Because as you talk to him, you're running around that thorn. He sees it and feels it or something. Then he asks a question, and then boom, you're able to remove it. He doesn't remove it, right? You see it, boom, and he pulls that out. And that's what I think is one of the biggest gifts of what you do, Dave. And the stories that Dave's not going to tell you what to do. He's going to tell a story that makes a point, and his points are going to tell stories, right? So that you're feeling like you're being part of that. So,
yeah. And thanks, Don. And there's one other thing that sounds weird, but it's actually true. And I would be inauthentically immodest if I didn't state it. I just create a field of love and trust. You can feel, I don't want anything bad. I just want what's best for you. And that creates, and I think Marcia, you probably already started to experience that as well in the time we've come together. I just love Marcia. I just see perfection. She could come up with 1,000 things that are wrong with her, and I'm going to say bullshit. I'm going to call bullshit on them. So one is just having that honesty and saying, oh, these are some hard truths to face, but putting in a place where you're not, I tell people all the time when I say something and they say, oh, thank you, or they say something, they wince. I said, this is diagnostic. It's not complimentary or critical, right? I'm interested in the truth, and then creating a loving environment where you can do that. And, one of the things that I said to someone recently is, and I just met, and I said, you're so much better at giving than you are receiving. And that sounds like a small thing, but it's a big thing. It turns out it's a thing. I'm not worth it. I gotta do more. I'm not ready for it. I'll screw it up, or I gotta become one of my business partners to call it cleaning up for the maid. I gotta get better before God can help me, or whatever. You never, don't take any of these words. It's just, you take them all metaphorically, but I got to get better. And so when you find yourself, you realize that's what's keeping you from receiving. Joe, there's a whole life coming in for you. And that's the intuition that brings you. There's a whole something waiting for you on the other side of this, right? So that's what's kind of, knocking the door. But I think, no, I'm not ready. And all these other things are just, if I may, are generally just excuses. They're just rationales to not, take that step because we're familiar. I used to practice I practiced law in where the the maximum security penitentiary was, and I'd see these guys, I'd maybe get them out on a writ or whatever, and a year later they were back in. They loved it. We love our prisons. We tend to worship, the stuff that comes in. So yeah. So anyway, I will send an email out. One will get a recording of this. There's just a bunch of people who wanted to hear this but couldn't make it, and also just a link that if you want to set up just a time to talk with me, won't cost you anything, and just to see if it's a good fit. And yeah, and I'm going to warn you about something that I warned my new attorney friend yesterday of, is you can expect a vulnerability backlash. And by that I mean, once you open up like this, there's a part of you that will just say, no, 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 I don't want this. I don't want this. So I'm just warning you, if you see the vulnerability backlash, it's nothing wrong with you. Right now, there's an opening. I assume all of you feel there's an opening. There's a window that we've slowly pried open. And that's when you want to make your move. And then if you start to come up with all these reasons, then one, be aware of that. And two, just know just feel like, oh, is this coming from a place of love or a place from fear? Is this coming from love or fear? And yeah. So, Marcia, anything else you want to throw in before we wrap up here?
No, I just love being here. I'm glad we've met.
And yeah, there's more to come. I have this crazy idea that Marcia and I work together, and we work with people, and she pulls the thorn out of the doggy's paws, and I throw the thorns out of people's paws, and because that's part of what she does, is she works on the relationship. Anyway, Joe, anything? I've fire hosed you today because you're another face I could see. Anything you want to add, subtract, multiply?
No, that's helpful. I think the thought of not acting from a place of fear, because I think a lot of the challenges I deal with is this anxiety over an uncertain future or keeping clients happy a certain way, feeling like if I make a mistake, everything will change for me or could put me in a place of would upset the status quo, I guess. But I'm trying to balance that with knowing that what the anxieties or thoughts that I have now are not how I want to be living my life. I want to be in a more peaceful, calm mindset. So I know change is necessary. It's very hard to make that change to something that's unknown. So you'd rather be in pain with what you currently have now rather than make a change to something that's ultimately going to be better for you.
I mean, I want to go ding, 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 like, you just won the jackpot or something. No, you got it exactly. And like I said, you can't unring the bell here. You know this to be true now, whatever you do. And that it is just it's the fear of the unknown. It's the security. It's who we are. It's how we're wired to be, especially if problem solving attorneys and whatever. So yes. And what I'd recommend for you is I think taking some steps forward where you can, you just want, and where my previous house in my practice marriage, we had a little creek that went through the backyard, and there were stones that went through the creek, and I take my daughter down there, and I just always make sure the stones, she had to take a little jump, but never a jump that was going to land her in the water. So you want to take those little steps that you can just take and then start to get the courage, because we're all so much more powerful than we can possibly imagine. There's a power that we have, and I see it, and it frustrates me I have to say frustrates, I can't get too attached to it, but it frustrates me to see people that I know are lions, and I want them to live as the lions that they are, and not just for themselves, but all the people whose lives will be benefited. So anyway, I think we're getting close to the end of the hour. Alexandra, can you talk at all, or are you still, I see well, I guess
I
not.
can talk. Yes, I think these are all good points, and I think they are good tips. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I've been practicing about 17 years now, practicing law for 20, but it's just a super thankless job, and I think we take it out on ourselves sometimes, and I know it's the right thing to do.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And it's not yours to get on the cross. That's not ours to do. And to take it out on ourselves and think somehow, first of all, it's just being around that energy all the time. And I noticed I did a lot of criminal defense work, and, I was trying murder cases when I was 26, 27 years old. And not to brag, but I guess I did. But anyway, the point is that I just know the energy of just always being around that kind of, just the conflict and the people and the situations. I'm not a Superman. It's going to have an effect on me. And being intuitive to where your expiration date is. That's the question we really have to ask ourselves. Have we reached an expiration date? And then, is there a way to make a change that is just the steps on the, it doesn't mean there is going to be one time you'd make a leap of faith on the rocks over the creek, but it means that I'm going to be able to take the steps to, to get to do something else, because there's something is awakened in you, Alexandra. It's awake. It's awakened. It's not going back to sleep. So, and the more we try to run from it and to ignore it, the more it's going to scream, because it's, in a way, it's not even about us. It's about what we might be able to bring into the world. So anyway, it was so much worth the wait to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I made it through here without coughing too much or dying too much, but I've really enjoyed everyone here. I'm so thankful for all of your presence. I'll send an email out if you'd like to follow up and schedule a half hour just to chat, get to know each other, and I'll just listen if you want. But I really enjoy that. And Marcia, thanks for coming on, even though you're not a lawyer. And Tom, thanks for coming on and making sure that I didn't screw anything up too bad. And to all of you who are going to listen to this that weren't here, thanks for listening.